Yeah, so you're a therapist, right?
a therapist.
Yeah, so tell me what that's like, because I'm actually training to be one.
I mean, it's not bad. So I've been a therapist for going on 6 years now. I've graduated in 2019, uh, right before the pandemic started. And so it was kind of interesting, like how I got into everything, bro. When I graduated, I started working at a federally qualifying health center, and it was cool over there. But the place that I worked at, we were one of the first place. Well, actually, we were the first place in Nebraska to administer COVID testing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so and like part of like what we would do is just because we were a health center, like so we had like doctors there, so people could come for like checkups, exams, like your everyday doctor's appointments, dentists, all of that. And so when people would come, they would ask them about their mental health. And so if there are people who are coming to get tested for COVID or are sick and stuff like that, we sometimes would have to go back to the appointment. So like we put on like full hazmat suits.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, and go meet with clients, man. So it was kind of interesting when I first became a therapist.
You couldn't just do that via Zoom?
No, you do it in person. It's in person. You're in
Mhm.
person. Like we were there, like coughing and all. They were, and we right there with them,
What was it like doing therapy in hazmat suits?
I mean, it was different. It was different. So like sessions like that, those would be like quick 15-minute sessions. We called them who's.
Oh.
So they were warm handoffs pretty much where the doctor did something. The doctors would do qualifying questions, and then if they qualified or like they ranked on a certain level with the PHQ-9, then we would go back there and do like brief therapy sessions, and then in the hopes that they would want to schedule for long-term therapy. Yeah, so it was interesting. It was really interesting. You see a lot of different types of people. You know what I mean? Like pandemic, everybody's locked down, but also everybody's getting sick. So you got people who never talked to a therapist, never thought about talking to a therapist, and then you got people who were open to talking to a therapist and have been in therapy before. So it was just interesting. It was
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, back then people really needed it. So, what inspired you to even be a therapist?
You want the long story? You want
I want
the
the
you
long one. I want the long one.
Yeah, so growing up, I never wanted to be a therapist, bro. I could care less about therapy. I could care less about mental health. Um, I had to go to a therapist when I was like in my teenage years just because of like behavior issues, getting in trouble, like doing things like that. And I remember my therapist's name was Dr. Grandy, and back then he seemed like he was pretty old. He's
He
still
was a
alive now.
doctor. So was he a psychiatrist or a
He was
therapist?
a psychologist. He was a
Got it.
psychologist, I think. Um, And so like I would go in there, he would give me like some snacks. I would sit on his couch and he would just ask me all these questions. And I remember I would just like I would give him some answers, but like I wasn't I wasn't into it. I was like, man, I'm not trying to be here. But he was cool. Like he was cool. And I'd go there get my pop and steal extra snacks and stuff like that without him knowing. And so like that was my experience with therapy. But essentially, where the whole journey started for me is I was a college athlete. I was playing football. I had a college scholarship. Didn't really care about college, but like my athletics got me there. I wasn't stupid, like I was a smart kid, but
Mhm.
just kind of like how life and trauma like added up.
Mhm.
Like school was just like I didn't care, but I made it to that level. And so I'm out of college, I'm playing football, I'm doing my thing, but I'm also selling drugs too. I've been selling drugs since I was like 12, 13 years old. Smoked
Wow.
weed, sold a lot of weed, did all that stuff. And so
Wow.
I'm out there doing that. Um, and we're probably like a week or two before spring ball. I'll say like a week. Spring, like the spring game, and I'm battling for a starting position and like I'm doing all this stuff that I shouldn't be doing on the back end, like I said, like selling drugs. And one day, like campus security came to my door, or not campus security, like my dorm's AD came to my door and told me to go to campus security because they wanted to talk to me. I got down there and they told me that I was arrested and I was getting booked on felony drug charges.
Oh, wait, how old are you at this time?
18.
Okay, so you're an adult. Okay.
Mhm. Well, technically in the state of Nebraska, you're not an adult till you're 19, and I was about a week and a half away from my 19th birthday.
You just made it.
I mean, they still charged me as an adult, so it didn't matter.
Mhm.
But yeah, I got hit with that, bro. So like I lost my scholarship. I got kicked out of school. I was sitting in
Wow.
jail, man. They
Wow.
charged me with felony one or felony two charges, which comes with a mandatory sentence of 10 to 15 years, max 20.
Wow. Just for dealing. Something
Mhm.
that's legal now. I mean, not dealing, but smoking is
Smoke,
legal.
yeah, it's legal now, and there's a lot of people who like get to benefit from it. But then there's also a lot of people who are incarcerated because of what people do freely now. You
Right.
know, but that's not to diminish like the behaviors that I was doing because what I was doing, like I knew I was doing something that I shouldn't have been doing, and so like at the end of the day, like I got to own that, and I had to own that. Um, but I eventually got bailed out. And like my mentality was, I'm not about to like try to cop no deal. I'm not about to try to do any of that. Like I'm gonna take this to trial. I'm gonna try to beat it. And I remember at this time, like I didn't have any money because I would just blow all my money. Like I would smoke, I would party, I buy shoes, buy clothes, buy food, like flex, like do all of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So like at this time, I had no money to get a real attorney, so I just had a public defender. Um, and my public defender, like when she got the discovery, which is like where they get all the evidence before you decide whether or not you're going to take it to trial or not. We got the discovery and like they just had recordings on me. They had text messages. They had all this stuff. Come to find out, one of the people that I had selling for me had wore a wire. They were an informant. Um,
Wow.
and from reading like the transcripts that they had, like I knew exactly who it was. Like they didn't say like they put CI in the transcripts, confidential informant. They don't release the name, but like I'm reading and I'm like, man, I remember all these interactions. I remember all these stuff. Like I knew
Oh my
exactly who it
God.
was. And I'm like, dang, bro wore a wire on me. This is crazy. And
Like a TV
so
show. It's like a movie.
pretty much. But I wasn't even like compared to not to minimize, but compared to like what other people do, like I wasn't selling that much. Like I would pick up like a QP every couple of days, which is a quarter pound, which is like roughly like 3.5 ounces, roughly. Um, but I wouldn't like I knew people who had big old trash bags and like multiple trash bags full, and I'm just like, man, I'm just out here really doing anything y'all trying to paint me out to be like this kingpin, and I'm not. But again, like I have to sit back and I have to own that I'm still doing something wrong. So we can't justify, I'm only doing this much or whatever. But this was my mindset. And so going to trial, it was pretty much like sealing myself away, like you're about to go do some heavy time. And so my public defender was like, there's this thing called drug court. You could get involved with it. I was like, I'm not trying to do no drug court. I don't know what that is. And so she was like, it's pretty much like a intensive 2-year rehab where you have to qualify for it. You have to have a dual diagnosis. So I have to have a mental health diagnosis and then also a substance use diagnosis to qualify for it. So I had to go get evaluated. And essentially, I got diagnosed with major depressive disorder and then also cannabis use disorder, which is what they'll call it now. Before it was like cannabis dependence or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a cannabis use disorder. And so that qualified me for it. And essentially, drug court is part of this group of problem solving courts. They're nationwide, and they're built to deter and keep nonviolent offenders who have substance use related charges out of the prison system because
Mm.
prisons are overpopulated. They want to work on rehabilitating people and getting people back out. If you just have a substance use charge, it's not like going to prison is not necessarily going to rehabilitate you. It's just going to put you back in the
Right.
environment. And so
And it's
they
legal now.
exactly, exactly. But they created these programs to kind of deter that and help people get back on their feet. And so essentially what it consisted of was I had to do IOP, which is intensive outpatient treatment. It's 13, at minimum 13 weeks long, for 9 hours a week. You go 3 hours for 3 days, and then you have to do therapy 1 hour a week. So total of 10 hours a week. I had to do AA, NA meetings at least 3 times a week. I had a drug test minimum 5 times a week at random. I had to go to like this class called relapse prevention, class called MRT, class called aftercare. Had to go stand in front of the judge for 3 hours, 3 hours once a week, every Friday. Like I had to do all these different qualifications. And then on top of that, I had to move from my college town to this other small town in Nebraska. So my college town roughly had like 7 to maybe 10,000 people with the college.
Wow.
Um, Without the college, it was probably like 2 to 3,000 people.
Hmm.
So I had to move to the small town of like 20,000 people. And mind you, I'm from Omaha. We got 1 million people in our metro area. Now I'm in this town of 20,000 people, which primarily were just like all white people. I'm black, you know what I'm saying? And so, and I couldn't leave that town. This is where I had to do my drug court at. And so, like, in this town, I hit like one of the biggest depressions of my life because I'm in this small town. I don't know anybody. I'm away from everything that I know. Like, all of my identities that I had of myself were completely stripped at this point. Like, no longer Payton the drug dealer, no longer Payton the athlete, no longer Payton the one who got all the money, no longer Payton any of this stuff. I'm just Payton here in this small town, invisible. But I'm not invisible because I'm this big old black dude. But like, you know what I'm saying? And
So
so
what
like
was that like being the only black person in a white town? What was that like?
I wasn't literally the only black person, but like, because there's like a tiny pocket of other black, but I don't know them. You know what I'm saying? I'm just this college kid. I'm not from this town. I didn't live here, so
Uh,
I don't know who they are. But like, it was depressing, bro. Like, I hit a bottom. I hit a bottom for sure, and like, I no longer had substances to cope with my emotions. On top of all of the emotional and physical and mental trauma that I went through growing up, like smoking weed since I was 11, 12 years old, like that masked a lot of the stuff that like I was dealing with. And now I didn't have any of that. And so there were a lot of nights where I'm just up crying. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of days where I'm up crying. There's a lot of times where I'm driving from place to place crying. Because I'm just like, man, this is what my life has come to. I almost, I remember having thoughts. I would have almost rather have been in prison because then I would at least be around people that I could relate to, people that I knew, like, you know what I'm saying?
and everything's free.
Exactly. But looking back on it, hell no, I ain't trying to go to prison. Like,
Uh,
nah, I'm good. I'm good. Like, I'm glad I went through what I went through, but going through that, I'm like, man, like that would have been that almost seemed easier um mentally at that time. And so I'm going through that. And again, part of my drug court, I had to meet with a therapist. And so this was like in conjunction with my IOP. Um, and with my therapist, like they're supposed to focus on the substance use and all of that stuff. But my therapist was like, "Yeah, I know you're here for substance use." And she's a this sweet white lady, like middle aged, and she was dope. Her name was Julie. Love Julie.
uh,
Like I know we're supposed to be working on like your substance use issues and things like that. She was like, "But I don't think substance use is your main problem. I think that's a symptom of your problem."
smart woman.
You know what I'm saying?
Smart
She was
woman.
like, "I think it's deeper than that."
Yeah.
And I want to focus more on like some of those deeper issues that you don't talk about. And I remember in that moment, I was just like, dang, like, so she sees me pass like these substances, like, and IOP something like we had to do in order to advance. And I remember it was a fight at first for me. They were like, you have to say your name, and you have to do this in A and NA too. They're like, you have to say your name, you have to say whether or not you're an addict or you're an alcoholic, and da da. I'm like, oh, addict or alcoholic, like, because cat side caveat, in my classes, in my IOP classes, in the AA and NA meetings, you gotta think about it, okay? I'm in this town, 20,000 people, majority white people. Um, the demographic of people who are struggling with substances, they're middle-aged and elderly white men, middle-aged white women who
Mhm.
are struggling with severe alcoholism, like severe, like you look at them and it's like, damn, you had a hard life. And then
Yep.
also meth. Like meth is heavy in Nebraska and then also in Iowa too. Like heavy, heavy, heavy. So like I'm like, they're saying I'm addict and alcoholic. And I'm like, I don't look nothing. I don't relate to this addict and alcoholic thing. Y'all out here, like, in my mind, I'm like, y'all really tweaking. I'm not tweaking. I just like to have some fun. I like to smoke weed and make everything better. Like, that's not me. But I eventually came to the realization, like, no, like I do have some addiction
Mm.
that I have to face. Like otherwise, I wouldn't be in this room with you.
Mm.
Um, but we would have to say that. And let me try to get back on track. I go everywhere. I got like ADHD brain, man.
Oh,
So
so I think you wanted to talk about Julie. You wanted to go back to Julie for some
yeah,
reason?
yeah, yeah, yeah. She saw me for more than just addict and alcoholic. She saw me for more than just that.
Mhm.
And it really opened my mind. And so like the process that we started working on was unpacking like a lot of the traumas that I went through, traumas with my father, traumas with my own self-identity, like just growing up as like a fat kid getting bullied, like all
Mhm.
these different traumas, man. And I was in a place where I had no other choice but to be vulnerable. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying?
Yep. Yep.
Like I look back to my time that I spent with my therapist when I was a kid, like I didn't have to be vulnerable, like I didn't have to. You know what I'm saying? Like my life didn't depend on it. Like I could just leave there and go smoke some more weed, go kick it with my friends, go do what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? But in this position, I had nothing. I had nothing. I had nothing. Like, and so like my time that I spent in that room with her was super intentional. Like it was something that I look forward to. You know what I mean? And so like I was able to unpack a lot of this stuff. And as I'm doing it, I'm like, dang, there's a lot of people who come from where I'm from, who have experiences like I do, that don't get an opportunity like this. You know what I'm saying? Like we look at the demographic of therapists, like there's not a lot of therapists who look like me. There's not a lot of therapists who talk like me. And even in my city, like at the time, like it's like I had to go, like I was going to see an older white dude, you know what I'm saying? And like I remember my experience through that. Not saying like Dr. Grandy he wasn't a bad dude. He was cool. But it was just like that relatability piece. Like I couldn't relate. I didn't feel like I
Yeah.
wanted to talk to him. I didn't want to talk to him. And I'm like, there's so many people who have that. And then they end up in a situation like mine, or they end up in a worse situation, or they end up dead because they never had that space or that place, or like that stigma around mental health was never broken. And so that started my journey for me of just like mental realization and mental clarity and really wanting to dive into that more. And so eventually, it was about 6 months later, like I was able to earn my way back to move into my college town while I'm still going through drug court. They usually don't do this. They make you stay in the town that you have to do your drug court in. But I earned my way back to my college. College reinstated me, got my scholarship reinstated, got back on the football team, finished out my career, graduated from college, graduated from my drug court about 2 years later. Um, but while I was doing that, I started working at this social work agency out in Norfolk, Nebraska, at their day reporting center, which is essentially a place where kids will come who are in the juvenile justice system or in the health and human services system, when they're struggling, if they get suspended from school, if they get in trouble, so on and so on. And so, like, I was working with these kids, and at this time, I'm about 20, 21 years old. I'm working with these kids who are aged anywhere from like 8 to 18. And so
Wow.
I'm not removed from them that are struggling, and like they really click with me. And I was like, man, this is nice. They're listening to me, they hear me because like I am them. I was them. You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean?
You can relate.
Yeah. And so I really enjoyed it. And so I eventually worked my way up to coordinating the day reporting center. And then I started like taking on all these other roles at this agency. So like I started doing family support, intensive family preservation. I started doing drug testing for kids and adults, doing GPS tracking, um, like ankle monitoring, all these different things. Um, and like it became like this full-time job for me where I was making some pretty decent money. This is from the years of 2014 to 2016.
Okay.
Um, and during that time in Nebraska, minimum wage was 7.25, 7.35, and
Wow.
I'm getting paid $17 an hour.
Wow.
Um, and at this place, we're covering a radius of about like 200 miles, 200-mile radius. So sometimes I would have to drive like hour and a half, 2 hours to get to a certain case, 3 hours sometimes to get to a certain case. And so I'm working a lot, I'm doing a lot, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. But it got to a point to where I was just like, this is not sustainable. I'm having like checks that are like 50, 60 hours a week. And I'm like, nah, I can't keep on doing this, but I want to have the same impact. And so I looked at the hierarchy in the agency, and the next step up was therapists.
Mm.
They weren't having to do all the travel. They were still able to meet with people, still able to build that relationship, still able to help people. And I'm like, okay, that's the next step. And so I enrolled in UNO, which is University of Nebraska Omaha, back where I'm from, to give me a reason to leave the town because I couldn't just leave $17 an hour just because like I wanted to leave the town. That wouldn't have made sense. I'm like, this is
Right.
good.
Right.
Um, Enrolled back there, got into college, and moved back in 2017 and hit the ground running, bro.
So you have your master's in what, counseling?
Clinical mental health counseling.
Okay. So what type of therapist are you?
Uh, Elaborate on that. What do you mean?
Like, are you just like you know how some people are like a marriage and counsel? Like, do you have a specialty?
Nah, nah, no specialty. So my credentials are LIMHP, which is the highest level of credentials for a therapist in the state of Nebraska. It's a licensed independent mental health practitioner.
Okay. So
Yep.
I noticed because I have a bunch of therapist friends, and I noticed that a lot of them, a lot of people become therapists because they were struggling with mental health themselves, and a lot of them become therapists not only to help other people, but also to get answers themselves. So is that part of the reason why you became a therapist to get some answers for yourself?
Not necessarily, no. But I will say through my schooling, which UNO at the time that I went had really good schooling. Um, like there was a lot of answers that I got for myself just because of the professors and the different scenarios. So like in counseling school, a lot of it is applicable knowledge. So like we would have to practice on each other, or like our teachers would put us in situations and scenarios where we would have to give like real life stuff as if we were a client. Um, and like that, I think going through therapy school helped to unlock even more within myself. Um, just because I was super transparent, I was super vulnerable, I was super honest with like things that I was going through and situations and stuff like that. So like I didn't necessarily seek that out of school, but that's something that I did gain from going to school to be a therapist.
Yeah, and I would also imagine that, sometimes you see yourself in when you talk to clients, sometimes you see yourself and because I'm training to be a therapist right now, and I would imagine that I would also learn a lot through the process when I do speak to clients, because I think it's also not only a helping process, I think it's a learning process as well, would you say?
Most definitely, most definitely.
So, you did bring up, that it sounds to me like you had a rough childhood.
I don't know if I guess you could say it was rough. I don't know. Like I've had my own experiences, you know what I'm saying? And not to like compare my experience to anybody else's, but like I would say like compared to a lot of people, like I had it pretty good. Like I was not, we never, like my family, we never struggled. Like,
Financially?
well, not saying, let's rewind. We definitely struggled. My mom never showed that we were struggling. We never needed for anything. There were a lot of wants, but we never needed for anything. Um, you know, like I had a split household. My mom and dad didn't get along, and so he would be in and out of the house. A lot of times he would be gone, and then they finally like separated when I was like 11 or 12 years old. I didn't get along with my dad, man. I didn't get along with him at all. There was like a lot of physical, a lot of physical, a lot of physical things between he and I. Me and my dad have reconciled. We've reconciled everything that we went through, which is really good. And I love my dad, and I got a good relationship with my dad now. Um, but it took me coming to a place of just being able to understand like he was only doing what he knew, you know, and him just telling me like what his upbringing was like, and him actually like taking steps to like do differently. Um, and all that happened around the time where I got like my felony drug charges as well too. Um, but like just growing up with like a lot of that, growing up overweight, like I was a pretty big, like I was huge. I was huge. Like I think in fifth grade, I was like 200 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I was big. I was
Wow.
big.
Uh-huh.
So just being on the back end of bullying with that, um, getting messages of like I'm weak, I'm soft, and all these things. And so I had like this internal dialogue of like, I'm not gonna be weak, I'm not gonna be soft, I'm not gonna be this, I'm gonna be this, like all these different things that were not the healthiest that led me into these different paths and these life choices. Like me wanting to sell drugs was because like I didn't want anybody to think I was soft. Me wanting to be in the streets and run the streets is because I didn't want anybody to try me. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead, try me if you want. But even deep down with that, like I had like a strong moral compass. And so I knew all the stuff that I was doing was wrong. And so it was like me having to press against like this moral compass that I would have. And so it was very conflicting, you know what I'm saying? Like as I'm going through this stuff. Um, so I wouldn't say like I had like a rough childhood, but I guess you could call it a rough childhood.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're minimizing. I think that, your parents
Possibly.
split. Yeah, I mean, because your parents split and you were bullied a lot. I mean, that to me is already rough in itself. And I'm wondering like what is your understanding of yeah, so let's start with your dad because you mentioned your dad and like to me, if a parent and a kid, especially if the kid is young, is fighting and not getting along, to me, I'm putting the blame on the parent. Like you were just a little kid. How can you put a blame on a little kid, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I think in the place, I think the place where I'm at now is like I understand. I understand one some of the behavior patterns that I had that that would lead my dad to feeling the things that he did, but it also is on him to be able to regulate. to be able to regulate and to be able to parent in a healthy way. And so I don't blame I don't sit in a place anymore of where I blame my dad for the stuff that he did. Like
Mhm.
I just hold myself accountable to how I move and understand how I move and how I'm going to continue to move going forward. Um, when I was younger, yeah, I put a lot of blame on my dad. Put all the blame on my
But
dad, and
that, but this
I
is
think rightfully
I
so.
think that was 100% justified though.
Yeah, rightfully so,
Right,
100%.
exactly.
100%, rightfully so. Like, because I'm just a kid. Like, I'm a kid in this existence that I didn't ask to be a part of.
Right, right.
Now I got to deal with this. You know what I'm saying?
And
And so,
the reason why I like emphasizing that is because, just in case there are people who are watching, a lot of people did have abusive parents, and I like to make it clear that it's justified if you are angry at them or if you were angry at them, it is just that anger is justified.
100%, 100%, 100%. It's never on the child to soothe or to regulate their parents.
Yep.
Like, and
Yep.
so if there's anybody that's watching this that feel like they're in a position or have been in a position where the parent is like, only did this because, and it's just like, no, you did that because you don't know how to control yourself. And this has nothing to do with me. Um, and if you're a victim of abuse, if you're a victim of mental or emotional abuse or violence, like it's not your fault. And it doesn't matter what anybody's like, that's on them. That's on them. It's not on you. And you don't have to own that. You don't have to take responsibility for that.
Of course. And,
Man,
some people go through life with the mentality of everything is my fault, everything is my fault. And like a lot of people actually find that empowering, like to put all the blame on themselves and to a lot of people can't stand the idea of living in a world where some things aren't their fault. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah. Yeah, I do believe that in order to transcend and really start the process, like you do have to focus accountability on you. And accountability doesn't mean it's necessarily like your fault for what somebody else did,
Uh,
but it's owning your position in the situation. How did I react to it? What type of thought process did I take to it, and how did I carry on with myself? Because that's where true healing can come from. And that's when you're really able to relinquish the power that somebody else has over you when you get to that space. But for a lot of us, like we can't just start there. Because if you try to start there, it's super unhealthy. And now we're minimizing what other people are doing for us. We're justifying what other people are doing to us. And that in itself is unhealthy. Right? Taking accountability doesn't mean you're accountable for these abusive actions that somebody else is doing to you,
mhm.
but it means I'm accountable for like how I'm going to
Healing.
process this. Yeah, I'm accountable for my healing. I'm accountable for whether or not I'm going to hold space for you in my mind. You know what I'm saying? Whether or not I'm going to hold emotional space. So that means like I'm accountable for my forgiveness to you. And forgiveness doesn't mean like I got to let you back in my life. I gotta be buddy with an individual. It doesn't mean any of that. But what it means is like I'm relinquishing these emotions that I have toward it. I see why you did that, and it's like I forgive you. It's cool, but I can forgive somebody and keep them at a distance. That's what a lot of people don't realize. Like they think like because of forgiveness, it's open arms, come back into my life, and it doesn't have to be that.
Right.
It just means like I'm not gonna hold this because when we hold on to things, it becomes toxic. You
Well,
know what
that's
I'm
what I
saying?
was gonna ask you. I was gonna ask you what even motivated you to forgive your father.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the church, man, so I have a strong Christian background,
Mhm.
very God centered, and so I know forgiveness is like a big thing. Um, but just realizing, like I said, realizing like if I don't forgive, like I'm gonna be walking around with this anger and this hatred and this like all of these different things, like. And anytime I hear about my dad or anytime something about my dad comes up, now I'm all of a sudden just like, I'm tense. Like I have this cortisol getting released into my body because like I can't let it go when my dad might be just living his life. You know what I mean? Like he might be walking down the street, strolling, smiling, whistling, and I'm over here stressed out. Why? Like I'm giving my power and my control to this other person. And so like that was a big realization for me. Is just like I don't want, and this is something that I worked on with my therapist. Like I don't want to give my power to other people. Like so, I have to be able to forgive. When you forgive, you take your power back. You
And
tell
how
them like,
did you reach that point of forgiveness? How did you reach that point?
oh, it's a process, man. It's a process. It's a daily process. Like you have to actively work at it. You know what I'm saying? Like because we're humans, we have emotions. and our emotions can be strong. And based on the type of messages you were given as a kid and the type of messages that you internalize, like those are going to be the things that you gravitate toward the most. Like for me, I gravitated towards like shutting down and cutting people off, even if I really cared about them, because that's what my dad did. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like that's what I saw him do. That's what he would do to me. Like he would get mad, he would push me away, he wouldn't talk to me, he'd talk shit about me, and then it
Wait,
was just,
what is your understanding of why he was like that?
well, I mean, he just grew up. My dad grew up hard. He grew up with a mom who didn't have the nicest names for him, who had like a lot of male male companions who came before my dad. You know what I mean? Like his dad was not in his life. His dad like had all these empty promises that he would give. His dad would just like up and disappear, and then come to find out like he's right down the street, but just didn't want to spend time with him. Like so, it was you know what I'm saying? Like it was just an emotionally void childhood. And so, like when you have an emotionally void childhood, like you're searching for meaning in all these different things in all these different places, and you're similar to mine. You know what I mean? And so, like the cycle, I saw how the cycle repeated itself,
Yep, yep.
just in different situations and different scenarios. Because for my dad, it wasn't like he didn't want to be in my life. My dad wanted to be a dad. He just didn't know how.
Mm.
Didn't know how. His dad didn't want to be a dad. He wanted to be gone. You know what I'm saying? And so like I saw how the cycle played out, like, and we were able to talk about that. You know what I mean? And he was able to talk about it from a place of accountability, and not a place of blame or a place of like trying to avoid the accountability. He's like, no, man, like I failed you, and like I was just trying to do like what I know. I was trying to do the opposite, but like I ended up doing this, and I see how, you know what I'm saying?
So what I'm hearing is that his intentions were good, but he didn't really know how to be a father.
Correct. That's a lot, and that's a lot of us. That's a lot of us. But the reality of the situation, and I tell a lot of my clients this, um, a lot of us go into things with good intentions, but intentions are less of the concern and it's more of the impact, right? Like a common phrase that a lot of people use is like, I didn't intend to do that. Right? Like when they wrong somebody, like that wasn't my intentions. That
Yep.
wasn't my
Yep. Hmm.
and like I tell my clients, like especially like if they're in like disputes with their spouse or something like that over something they did, and they tell them like that wasn't my intention. I'm like 100% understand that, but I need you to realize like it doesn't necessarily matter what your intentions were. What matters is the impact that was had, and that's what you have to own. That's what you have to be accountable for. You have to be accountable for the impact, right? And that's where you have to sit. You can talk about your intentions all day, but at some point you have to go to that other part, that other I word, impact. You have to go to that. And if you don't, now you're at fault and you're avoiding the accountability that you need to take.
Yeah, one thing I noticed about people is there are a lot of people with good intentions, but maybe not so much self-control. And a lot of people are super emotional. And I can sit here and name like 20 people who have great intentions, but lack the self-control. And then that causes them to hurt other people. So what would you say to those people?
You just got to you have to be accountable. You have to be accountable for your impact. I love that you have good intentions,
Mhm.
but everybody with good intentions don't always have the best impact on the people that they're trying to have the impact on. And so you have to sit with that. You have to sit with that. You have to reflect on that. You have to own that. And if you're not in a place to own that, then like you're just gonna go around hurting people. And
Yep.
it's very selfish. It's a
Including
very selfish.
yourself, including yourself.
Exactly. Because because right now, like if all I'm moving off of is my intention, right? It's my intention. All I'm thinking about is me. I'm not thinking about anybody else. And so is that the type of impact that you're trying to leave on the people around you, or is
I
it
mean, that's
different?
basically narcissism.
No, I mean there's a little bit more to narcissism. A
What
little
is
bit
your
more.
understanding of narcissism? What is narcissism?
So narcissism is a compilation of a couple different things. I think it's like a what's the word? It's like a
Disorder?
no, 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 no. Like people throw around narcissism a lot lately. Like you see it all over social media. Everybody talks about like narcissist, narcissist, narcissist. But there's a lot of different things that go into making a narcissist a narcissist. Like a narcissist at its core is somebody without like to put it into layman's terms, is somebody who literally like they are the center, they're the center of the universe. They do absolutely no wrong. Every situation that they go in. So part of what you were just saying is true, like, right? Like I'm only thinking about like my intentions. If I'm only seeing my intentions, that can be a qualification of a narcissist, but then there's more to it because if it's only about my intentions, I never see anything that I do is wrong, right? Like because like that's not what I intended. Here's what I intended. Um, so I guess in that sense, yes, because they see no wrong that they do. Nobody can tell them any wrong that they do to divert any type of blame or any type of accountability. They're narcissists are very charismatic.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
when you talk to them, like they seem like, ooh, like this is a person that I want to go to. They typically like will they call it love bomb. So like
Yep. Yep.
they'll throw all of this stuff at you to make it seem like, oh, this person really cares about me. This person's really for me, whether it's in
Yep.
friendships, whether it's in relationships, whatever. And then they siphon it all away and they have you pretty much working for their own self-esteem. Like whatever it is that you do is actually building them up and they don't build you up. And then like when you give them like when you give them like feedback on that and you're like, hey, I feel this, they're like, nah, you're tripping. And then there'll come a period of bombing you again really quick to kind of like reel you back in and then they'll take it away again. Like so it's like this cycle of that. Just to put it in a layman's term, pretty much.
Yeah, the charisma part is interesting. So I have an aunt. I did a mental health podcast with her as well, and her ex-husband was he was actually he had NPD, not narcissistic personality disorder, and one of the 10 there are like 10 traits for NPD, and one of them was overly charismatic. And that's so interesting because the reason why essentially is because a lot of them they need external validation and they need people to basically praise them. They want as much praise as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, most people who are diagnosed as NPD, they usually come from like trauma-riddled households where they
Yep.
didn't get validation
Yep.
or they were overly validated. And
Hmm.
so now like it's an expectation that they have like their parent or their primary caregiver just like overly like fed
Yep.
them, fed them
Yep.
into this unrealistic spot where it's like yeah, actually you're not that great. And the moment you tell them they're not that great, and they're like, no, I am that great. And it's like, no.
But see that's why it's so hard to be a parent because you have to have that balance, right? Like you have to compliment them and you have to give them words of affirmation, but at the same time, you can't do it too much. So you have to have that like perfect middle ground, which is tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be tricky. It can be tricky. Some studies would say like you shouldn't give your kids any type of compliments or validation in that sense, just because then it teaches them to be dependent on that. You know what I mean?
All no compliments at all?
That's what some studies would say. Like you
I don't
said,
know about that.
I know, like you said though, there's a balance. There's a balance, and I think at the end of the day, when it comes to parenting, because I'm a parent, like I got 5 kids. When it comes to parenting, like what you're gonna realize and what you're gonna find out is like there's no avoiding fucking your kids up in some way. Excuse my language, but I'm gonna just
Yeah,
say it like
traumatizing, right?
yeah. There's no avoiding it. Like you're going to. What you have to be open to is you have to be open to being able to have like real conversations with your kids, hearing them and not just seeing them, being able to own your wrongs, and then being able to do differently when they voice a concern. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you have to be open to doing. Just because like there's no handbook on being the perfect parent.
Yep.
Like we can read all these books, we can do all these studies, you can implement all these things, but then there's going to be another spot where your kid is feeling depleted. And they're gonna address it to you. You're gonna be like, well, I'm doing all this stuff. And it's just like, okay, like I just have to be willing to be able to hear my kid and create a space where they have a voice, where they feel heard and where they feel valued. Like that's the most important thing.
I was doing a mental health podcast with my friend Larry like 2, 3 weeks ago, and he was saying like you're gonna traumatize your kids, and the thing is if you don't, the world will. So it's like you can't expect your kids to not get traumatized. That's part of being a human being. I mean, you're gonna be traumatized. If you're too soft, then they're gonna be shocked when they see it in the world. But what I'm also noticing is that, it seems like every generation gets better and better. Like you said, your grandfather wasn't really there for your father, and your father had good intentions, but he didn't really know how to be a good father. And it seems like, what I'm noticing is you're breaking cycles, especially you. It seems to me like you've broken the cycle. You seem like a great father to me, which is a beautiful sight to see.
Appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would even go on a I would go on a limb to say my dad was beginning to break cycles as well too, because even though, like I said, like we're all gonna mess up our kid in some way. And even though like me and my dad went through what we went through, there were still a lot of good life lessons that my father taught me.
Hmm.
And like to this day, like right now I'm writing a book, and like in my
Wow.
acknowledgments, I put that. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the things that I'm able to pull from is because my dad taught me these things. You know what I'm saying? Like my dad was present, but he wasn't present because he didn't know how to be present. Like here's the thing. We'll go back to my dad real quick. My dad worked really hard. He always kept a job. He worked a lot, um, which is something that he didn't see his dad do. He didn't see his dad working. You know what I'm saying? And so I see my dad trying to break cycles by like always keeping a job, always working consistently, busting his butt. You know what I'm saying? To make sure that like he's doing the thing. Um, but then there were other areas where he failed. And
Yep.
later on in life, he was able to own those. You know what I'm saying? He was able to talk about it. Now, would it be different? Because I did a podcast with my dad and we talked about it as well
Oh,
too.
really?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I did. It's titled "Sins of a Father."
I'd love
Um,
to watch that.
Oh yeah, bro, you gotta check it out. You gotta check it out. It's on the YouTube channel. Um, but like one of the things he mentioned, he was like it took me like 40 something years to figure out like where I was wrong. He was like I love how I um have been able to figure my stuff out a lot quicker and been able to have those conversations with my kids like a lot sooner. Like, because I'm not perfect, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are areas where like I've struggled. There's areas where I've failed. There's spaces where I've could have did better. But I try to create an environment for my kids where like we can talk about it. I try to create an environment with my wife where we can talk about these things and where we can work through these things. Him and my mom, they didn't like it would just beef, and he would just leave, and then he would go cheat. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like with his dad was just gone. Like he was just gone. My grandpa got kids all around the world that he
Wow.
won't claim. You know what I'm saying? And so like to bring it back, like I think my dad was starting to break cycles as well too. It just looked different. You know what I'm saying? And it's been a longer process for him because of just like where he has been at in the process of being able to heal. You know what I mean? Like for him, like if he tells you it, like his process really didn't start to take flight until he was about 40 something years old, where he
Wow.
sat back and he had to reflect on his life and look at like the situations and circumstances that were happening.
Well, I would imagine that before that, he was probably just putting all the blame on other people.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And he'll say that. He'll tell you that. He'll tell you that he was saying like they were a fucked up person. Like he was never diagnosed as a narcissist, but he was like, man, I had like a lot of narcissistic traits that like I had to like hold myself accountable to. And that right there is a sign of somebody not being a narcissist. If they can say like, I'm messed up, like I'm doing some things that are wrong here, then you're probably not a narcissist because you can own some things.
If you could put the blame on yourself. And also remember, the world 50 years ago, the world was not a very psychologically aware place. Like we weren't really talking about, like even when I was a kid, we weren't really talking about NPD, narcissism, ADHD, BPD. We weren't talking about, boundaries. All of these things are coming to light now, which is great. And a lot of people say the world is going to shit, the world is going down. But one thing I love about the world, we're talking more and more about mental health. And that's one thing that I really love about today and the world today.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Yeah, so I have a few. Oh, so just before we leave the topic of forgiveness, because I wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Do you think that we should always choose forgiveness, or are there some exceptions to that?
I truly believe we should always choose forgiveness. Um, Again, forgiveness doesn't mean relationship. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting down your boundaries. It doesn't mean any of that. I believe that forgiveness first and foremost, at its core, it's going to be for you. It's
Hmm.
going to be for you because if we don't ever forgive somebody for a thing where they transgressed us, then we're just holding on to that emotional experience. And we're gonna constantly like be re-traumatized over and over and over again at this high level. At this high level. I like to think of trauma as like a cut or scar on our skin, right?
Hmm.
When you first get a cut, it's open, it's bleeding, it's gushing, like it looks really nasty. But over time, like as we start to process through, as we start to go through the process of forgiveness, like that wound heals up, right? But like if I stop actively forgiving, then like the moment that it gets triggered or like I bump my scar, it busts back open and it starts bleeding. So like as we continue to forgive and we work through the process of processing our emotions and processing the experience, the scar, like a full scar will eventually form and it'll turn into like this wound where it's not open anymore, but like you can see the scar wound. Like I believe that's what it's all about. You know what I mean? Like this, like that this was here. It's a reminder, like psychologically it goes back there, but the pain is not the same anymore. And that I believe that like when we forgive, like that's what we do. It doesn't completely take away the memory of the pain. It doesn't take away what happened, but it allows it to be fully healed so that it's not continuously bleeding on itself over and over again, and the pain is extensive.
Yeah, I think one reason why people hold on to resentment is because it's easier to handle anger than sadness. You understand what I'm saying? Like I feel like a lot of people like they hold on to anger because they feel like once they forgive, then the anger might transform into sadness, if that makes sense. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Anger is a protective emotion.
Yes, yes, yes,
That's a protective emotion, and under anger is like a blanket, and
yes,
under the are a whole bunch of different other emotions that are really trying to be experienced, but
yes.
we put anger on because it defends us.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of validity in that, but that leads to health complications down the road when we're constantly taking this place of, huh, I gotta be on
Yep.
guard, gotta be on defense. Again, cortisol is being released, and cortisol at excess levels, like that's the stress hormone at excess levels, it does a lot of things to our body. It
Kill
causes
it.
it to be inflamed.
Yep.
It causes like high blood pressure, causes like kidney disease, causes all these different things, and so like when it comes to like I would rather be angry at something than to actually experience the emotion. All you're doing is killing yourself. You're killing
Literally.
yourself.
Literally.
While the other person or the people that you're resenting, they're off living their life probably not even thinking about you anymore. And if they are thinking about you, then I'll tell them the exact same thing. Like you got to forgive. You got to just forgive and let it go and move on if you're in a place for that. Now with my clients, like I'm never like, oh, it's time to forgive. It's time to forgive. Like I always tell them like that's the end goal. Like you have to be able to forgive, but that's in time and that's when you're ready. Because I want to be honest with people. I want to be honest with people. Um, like that's where you want to be able to be at because you want to be able to relinquish this thing. You don't want to keep on carrying it. You don't want it to keep on triggering depressive states. You don't want it to keep on triggering your anxiety and having your mind running and racing all the time. You don't want to feel like you have to have a heightened awareness every time you're in a situation, you're in a place. And so like the only way we do that is to eventually get to a place of forgiveness. But that's going to be in your time. And so let's start with where you're at and let's just work from there.
Yeah, that's a really, really important concept that I was basically trying to hint towards because a lot of people aren't ready to forgive, and that's okay too, like because the thing is, if you try to force it right away, it won't work. So I'm glad that you brought that part up, because some people need years to forgive. So, and it's really important, whether you're a therapist or whether you're even just a friend, to not try to shove forgiveness down people's throats, to let them do it on their own time. So I'm glad you brought that part up. Before I move on to the next topic, I saw a fortune cookie one time. It said, while you are angry, others are out dancing. And that kind of reminded me of when you said, that they're probably living their life. So I know we only have like 8 minutes left. So I did want to talk about addiction, because we were talking about addiction and how some people are addicted to marijuana or heroin or whatever the case. What is your understanding of why people are addicted?
I truly believe that addictions come from uh, they come from an emotional place,
Yep.
like emotional void that you're trying to fill.
Yep.
Um, And sometimes like that emotional void could be something deep. It could be like a family wound.
Mhm.
It could be, you know, a lack or a neglect in a certain sense. And then other times, um, your body could just be chemically wired to want like constant dopamine hits. You know,
Mm.
you have like low dopamine levels naturally. And so I think that there are these two different spots that you can be in, but the moment that like you start using substances again, like we have these hormones that are released, and so like our bodies become dependent on them. They become dependent on them in one sense, and then they can become dependent on the chemicals that are in whatever substance that you're using. So like for example, a substance like marijuana. Marijuana doesn't have any chemicals in it like per se that cause your body to become physically dependent. Although I will say, just from being a previous marijuana user, like if I didn't smoke, like I'm getting irritable. So I think on a certain level you can say like your body develops like a dependence because it makes you not irritable, but it's not as strong as like a drug like meth, where like when you're not using it, your body literally is craving the meth. Like you're having physical symptoms, or like a substance like alcohol. Like when you're not using it, your body literally is saying, I need more alcohol so
Yep.
I don't feel like this.
Yep.
Or like cocaine or like crack, like all they have like these chemical components in them that make your body crave them. But with all of them, they all make your body, they attach to neurotransmitters in your body that produce like certain chemical releases or mimic certain chemical releases. And so now your body is like, I like this. I want to feel this. I like this feeling that I have. And then when I don't have this feeling, like now I'm just kind of like,
Yep.
and that's where the addiction cycle starts. There's this really cool video I showed my kids. Um, it's like these little stick figure animation videos, and it was just showing like the process of addiction. And it had this stick figure dude who what was he doing? He was like he was like hitting a rock or something. Like he was walking and then he found this rock or whatever it was, and he would hit it, and then everything around him would light up, and then he would start floating in the air. Um, and then like after like he was able to fly and stuff, and then after a second, he fell back down to the ground, and he would try to do everything that he was doing that he did, like when he punched the rock or whatever he did. I can't remember exactly what it was, so I'm gonna just say he punched the rock. He couldn't do any of that stuff anymore. So then he's like, dang. He was looking around, he was trying to find the rock, and he would hit it again, and then he would start flying, but then he would fly for a shorter amount of time,
Right. Right. Right.
find it again and again and again. And that's what addiction is like. It's like constantly seeking out these dopamine hits, because we can be addicted to substances, you can be addicted to food, you can be addicted to video games, and it's all about dopamine. Those when you're engaging in those activities that release dopamine, and then over time it stops and it no longer fulfills in the way that it used to. And so now like I'm just like dependent on this thing and I want more.
Yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit further because I know we only have like 5 minutes left, but so let's just say like someone is addicted to alcohol, right? So my and you know it is a disease. Alcoholism is a disease, and I always wonder like how much control do they have as far as going to the store, buying liquor and drinking? Like, because some people say it's out of their control, and so my question to you is it really truly out of their control?
I think you have to look at it from a perspective like this. If I pour water, let's say what's a river by you? What's a river by you?
There are no rivers by me. There's this Atlantic Ocean, but no rivers.
And you know what have you seen a river
Of
before?
course, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sides to the river, and then you got the canal in the middle, right? Let's say we drained all the water out of the river. Okay. We
Mhm.
drained it all and we put it into this big old bucket. And I'm carrying this bucket around, and I talk to the bucket and I say, hey, bucket, I'm gonna pour you, and I want you to create a new river. I
Mhm.
want you to create a new river for me. I'm gonna pour you back in your same spot. I want you to create new pathways. Okay. We pour the bucket into where the river was. How easy do you think it is going to be for that water to flow back down the same pathway?
To flow down the same pathway if it's in the bucket.
So I got the bucket, I took all the water out of the river, and these
Mhm.
pathways are already made, right? It's just empty canals now. Take
Mhm.
it all out, and I tell the water, I want you to create new pathways. I want you to make yourself a new river. And I pour it back into the same pathway. how easy is it going to be for it to run down that same pathway or
It,
to create a new river?
it's gonna be the same as before.
It'll be the same as before.
Yeah.
That's what it's like with somebody who's addicted to a substance,
Mhm.
telling them to like make a change in their life. They have these pathways that are already created, right? That are easy to flow back down, that are already made there in their minds mentally. And I'm telling you to like make a new pathway. Don't flow down this same one anymore. Do you get what I'm getting at?
Mhm. So what
I,
I'm hearing is that it's not in their control.
it is in their control. The water could create a new pathway, yeah,
Mhm.
right? It easily could, but it'll take a lot of work. It'll
Mhm.
take a lot of force. It'll take a lot more water, and it'll take like intentional redirection. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? So like there is a sense of control, but when your environment, when your surroundings, when your life like doesn't it isn't set up for like let me make a change or like the messages that you were given, the things that you learned early on, right? You're telling somebody to completely rewrite how your mind is wired.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm like you're
yeah,
saying like this is all in your control, just do it. And it's like well, yeah, but like that doesn't get rid of my trauma. It doesn't get rid of the reason why I drink. It doesn't get rid of like these behavior patterns. It doesn't get rid of my friends that I have. It doesn't get rid of the people that I drink with. It doesn't get rid of the core beliefs that I have about myself. It doesn't get rid of any of that stuff. I still am left with all of that. So what am I supposed to do with that? It's easier for me to just flow down the river that I already know. It's the path of least resistance. Everybody travels down the path of least resistance in their life unless they have like a strong like internal locus of control
mm,
and it has to be cultivated. That has to be cultivated. And for a lot of people, like if you're struggling with addiction, like your internal locus of control is probably weak and
yeah.
diminished. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to have a pretty good childhood and not have been really addicted to much in my life. But I did start researching addictions when I was like 29, 30. I started watching YouTube videos. Russell Brand was the first one. He was addicted to sex and chocolate. And I started watching addictions from Jordan Peterson and Dr. K and all these guys on YouTubes. And they all pretty much say the same thing, which is that meaning is the best antidote. So the best antidote to, according to a lot of people, to addiction is having meaning in your life and having something so meaningful like kids or a partner or a great job that you love, having something so meaningful that it makes you not even want to pick up the beer or not even want to smoke the blunt or the meth or whatever it is. I know you're busy. I don't want to hold you for too long. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah. I want to hit on that point real quick. I
Sure.
think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Having meaning or having purpose is one of the strongest antidotes. When you look at like these programs like AA and NA, they give the individual a higher purpose, right? Like they have their 12-step program where now their life is no longer about themselves, it's about them and their higher power.
Mhm.
Um, so that's right on the head. But the only way that individuals can get to that point is when they like first they have to acknowledge that whatever it is that they're like addicted to or that they're struggling with, like they have a problem with it.
Yep.
Because if there's something in my life that I don't acknowledge, like there's no way that I can work on it. If I don't think I'm overweight, I can't ever possibly like lose weight. If I don't think I'm out of shape, I can never get in shape. If
Yep.
I don't think I'm addicted to anything, then I'm never gonna fix that thing. And
Yep.
so a person has to come to that place. And then they have to start identifying the meanings that they had in their life before
Yep.
because I can't insert a new meaning if I don't even know the meanings that are already there, or if I
Mhm.
don't already know, like if I don't acknowledge the things that I'm operating on right now. And so, like it's this multi-layer thing, but essentially, yes, I have to create a new meaning. You know what I'm saying? I have to create a new meaning and a new understanding for my life. So
Yes.
yeah, I just want to acknowledge that. Yeah, that's right on the head.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a lot of people say that meaning is more important than happiness. I feel like we have a lot more to discuss. I know you're busy and I gotta head out too. So we're gonna have a part two. Sound good?
Facts.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
we have a lot more. I have a lot more questions, so we're gonna have a part two. But have a good one for now, Payne. Thanks for
All right,
coming on, man.
so, bro. Later.
All right, take care, man.